Hello and well met, everybody. This is Underlayman with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to take a look at the updated and revised Fantasy Grounds Unity Character Wizard for the DnD5e Ruleset. I am using Fantasy Grounds Unity 4.1.13. It is January the 5th, 2022, just in case you're watching this in the future. So in the D&D Ruleset, I have most of the character creation books loaded in the library. I'm also assuming that you have at least a standard license and at least the player's handbook. If you have just the SRD, you might be able to do some of this. I can't guarantee you that it's going to be complete, but you can still work on your characters that way. This assumes that you have at least the player's handbook, if not more. So in my library, I have quite a few modules loaded, including some third-party stuff, but mostly I'm going to be using the standard books that come with the official rule set, so I'm not using any homebrew. I don't think that the Character Wizard is quite ready for homebrew yet. I'm not sure, I haven't tested it, but it's definitely a step in the right direction as they've improved the way it functions. It's become a lot easier to use, less buggy, that sort of thing. So we're going to get right into this. So first thing I like to do is obviously I'll set up my desktop. That's something I'm just very habitual about. The only reason I'm doing this is because I want to make sure when I make my character I can test it out. So I set up the combat tracker. I'll drag it over at the end. So the next thing is I just gave this character a new name, because new character, basically what I call it. I'm going to build an elven wizard so that we can touch on a lot of the different things that occur during character creation. So I'm going to pick the standard array for right now, but you can use the drop down to do point buy method, or you can also do the manual entry where you just type things in, and then of course you can roll the dice, which will in fact roll dice for you. So, and then it will auto-populate the fields if you move them around with these little arrows. So if you need to change anything, if you don't like what you got here, you change it. So I'm just going to go to manual entry, and I was going to do standard array, but I think I'm going to change some things. So I'm going to have an 11 wisdom. Let's go with a 14 dex. Strength, we'll just leave that. Charisma, let's go with a 12. 14 dex. Put the con as a 9, kind of balance things out. And I'm going to start with a 15 in intelligence. So this is my elven character that I can build. It's going to be a high elf. So I just manually entered all those things. Any adjustments that need to be made in the rule set will be done automatically. It's part of Fantasy Grounds. Most of the things you have to do that evolve around your ability scores will be parsed, or it will be adjusted accordingly depending on what it's attached to. So the next step, after you do your stats, and you can see I have this little green check mark, means that it's basically been satisfied. It will show up as satisfied because you start off with the standard array. So that means you can still mess around with it. You're not committed yet. Once you commit to this, then Fantasy Grounds saves it. You can't really go back and adjust. Well, you can on ability scores, but there's other things that you can't very easily adjust, like race and such. Speaking of race, we're going to go to race. You can see I got all these different races here. Like I said, I was going to go with an elf just so I could test out some things. So I'm going to pick an elf, and once I do that, the elf subrace menu comes up. So I'm going to pick a high elf. Now when you do that, it's going to prompt you to select either the default racial modifiers or the Tasha's option. So you have your choice on how you want to do it. So I think I'm going to go with just the standard, hit default, and that will give me the default adjustments. So now I have a 16 intelligence and a 16 dex. So that just added the regular elf or high elf ability score increases. I get an extra language. So I'm starting off with Common and Elvish, so I'm going to give this particular character Sylvan. I think that's appropriate for its base. And you get one I guess you want to say a racial kind of, or a feature that you get is with the high elf is that you can pick a cantrip. So I'm going to go ahead and pick one. So let's go with light. I think that's a good spell to have. Even if you have dark vision, you still need light to read and such. Or maybe Mage Hand would be a good one. Do Mage Hand. So if you click on that, that's going to automatically assign Mage Hand to your spell list. And you can also look at this overview, which shows all of the things that I've chose up to this point, which is kind of cool. You can always go back and change these if you need to, just by clicking on them, and you can go back and adjust. So that's how you fix or readjust or reassign things before you hit commit. So make choices based on your changes. The next is class. So I'm going to go ahead and click on class. In this case, I'm going to pick the wizard because I want to go through spells and such. So I'm going to click wizard, and I have perception as a given, basically a skill that was given to me from an elf. So I'm going to pick arcana and history. I think those are pretty appropriate for a wizard. And at this point, if you wanted a multi-class, you could do so. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go to the background now. And as you're building the character, the wizard kind of keeps track of the overall view of what's going on in your character sheet. So over on the right, the summary is kind of like a preview of changes and the things that you've added. So to go to background, and you're going to pick any type of background that you have access to or available. I have a lot because I have a ton of different books open, so if you're not seeing as many choices, that's probably because you don't have as many books, or maybe you have more, but nonetheless, that's what's going on. So I'm going to pick a, let's see, I'm going to go with some sort of noble, I think. So with a noble, I get to pick another language as part of my background abilities, so let's go with, let's see, we know Common, Sylvan, and Elvish. Let's go with Draconic. That way, or Giant, if he studies magic, that might come. And then he's going to have a Dragon Chess set. That'll be, he's proficient, he knows how to play, he's pretty good at it, so. Alright, so then we got this, all these things settled, but now you notice the class hasn't been satisfied yet, because I still have one more choice here on proficiencies, and it looks like I may have doubled up, so that's why it came back, because I'm already going to get one of these from my background of my class, so it's giving me another chance here to pick skills. Previously, when you were building characters, these would overlap, and you had no way of knowing if you accidentally did that. So that's one good thing about the wizard, is that it helps prevent that. So I'm going to go ahead and take Insight. So now this has been added. So all those are satisfied now. So now it comes to inventory. So this is just for starting equipment. You're not stuck with all this stuff. You can reset the equipment. You can actually purchase equipment. But these are the class equipment that you get at first level. So don't panic if you don't like the choices in here. You can always go back on your character sheet and adjust those. Game Master, or if you're the host, you can change or fix those depending on what content you have, or create your own. So I'm going to pick the Scholar's Pack, and I'm going to start off with a dagger or a quarterstaff, and then for my spell focus, I'm going to use a crystal. And included in this build is a spell book that comes with your class. So that is something that would want to check. We're going to build your character. Some classes give you default equipment. I think like a rogue gives you Thieves' Tool. So you don't have to double up and buy that again. Now let's go to spells. So I'm going to pick the spells. So the first thing on here that's selected is the cantrips. And as you can see, they've added all the different classes just in case you get a cantrip from another school of magic or a different background class. It just depends on what you're building. So in this case, I'm picking from the wizard. So wizard is what the default is for this class, so it's already highlighted. So for a cantrip, since I already have the Mage Hand, I'm going to go ahead and pick Light. I think Light is a very important spell to have, especially if you have companions that don't have dark vision. And as you can see, the cantrips available is 1 of 3, so I've already picked 1. So it keeps a tally on there. There's nothing stopping you from picking more or less. It's just kind of a rough idea of the rules as written so that you can kind of conform to that. Here's Firebolt, so I'll go ahead and pick that. And 1 other. So I have an offensive, I have a utility, I already have Mage Hand. I think I want to have Prestidigitation, kind of get me out of those binds or fool people or something like that. So that's that. So there's the cantrips. And then when you go to level 1, you click on the level 1 button, it switches over to level 1. Again, it's default at Wizard. And I'm going to go down and pick a couple spells. So I can get up to a total of 6. So what I find is that you don't necessarily want to fill your entire spell book in one go. So what I do is I'll pick 3 or 4 and save some room for 2nd level spells, because you're only allowed up to so many spells in your spell book, so you got to keep that in mind. So that doesn't mean you can't. I just doing this for the purposes of building character with the wizard makes it easier if you leave yourself a little breathing room, at least 1 slot, just in case. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Charm Person. And again, it keeps track of what I chose there, so that's good. I'm going to go with Color Spray. And there's some real go-tos here, like Fog Cloud. And there are Magic Missile, I think, is one of them. Reese is another one. See, I may not want Color Spray, so I can delete that at this point. So if you double-click on this little round circle with a line through it, you can delete spells as you go. So I don't want no Color Spray this time. I do want Grease. It's one of my favorite spells. And I get 3 out of 6 here. So it's not counting the cantrips. The 3 out of 6 goes to level 1. So I don't want to pick all my spells right now, but I'm going to pick Magic Missile and Mage Armor. Those are the ones I use a lot. So Mage Armor, and you can use the side scroll bar if you don't want to use the mouse wheel, and Magic Missile. So I left myself 1 spell slot. I do that just in case, when I come up to level up again, especially if you're building, you're not starting from scratch, you're actually building up to level 2 or 3. That's why I'm doing it. But you can certainly pick more spells. I just do that just for the sake of the tutorial. Okay, so that's pretty much it there. I don't have any other features that allow me to pick from other schools of magic, but if I did, though, the availability is there. So once I'm done with that, you can click on feats. In this case, this character does not have any feats, so it'll satisfy it. It's just kind of a check just to make sure, see if you want to check it. Like at 4th level, you get an ability score increase, so that's something that you would probably look at that point. Or if you chose a variant half-elf or a variant human, those give, in a variant tiefling, I think, those are the ones that give you that choice. And I don't remember if Tasha's does that or not, but if you do a totally custom build, I think it has an option in there as well. So once you're done with that, you can go back and review what you've done. And what I like to do is look at the summary over here. You see something on there you don't want, or if you don't want to be an elf anymore, you can go back and change your class, your race, your stats, all that stuff. So this is your review. Once you're done reviewing the character, once you hit commit, now you are committed to the changes that you made. So once I hit commit, the character wizard is going to disappear for the time being, and now I just have the regular character sheet that people who are experienced with Fantasy Grounds will understand this, and they'll know what's going on with it as far as how this looks. So this is basically just the summary with the character, so all the skills are there. Check out the abilities. So yeah, all the ability features are there, and all the proficiencies are listed along with the languages, so all that carried over properly. The equipment is here. So you can organize your equipment at this point. It even gave me the starting gold, so that's a good thing. All these things in here are ready to go. Looks like the quarterstaff is ready to go, so if you go to your actions tab, quarterstaff is here. I might use it for two-handed use, so I change that to two-hand. There's my spells from my wizard list here and my cantrips, and then there's a section here for the innate spells, which is really nice. It's already set for you. And that's also in case it needs to change stats. So if you have something that's based on charisma, but all your other spells are based on wisdom or intelligence, that's something you can change in Fantasy Grounds going into the group. So if that's the case, I can come in here and manually change it. But fortunately, these are all based on intelligence, so I don't have to worry about it. Let's see. So we got the quarterstaff there. There's your inventory. Here's some notes, so if you wanted to put your alignment and any other role-playing notes in here. Your size does have to be in there for the purposes of scaling your character on the map. Have like a battle map and scaled for the actual grid. So the size should be there. That's your minimum. Alignment affects spells, but I don't know if that's going to be true going forward. But if you're good or evil, that does parse from protect from good and protect from evil type spells. There is the Adventure League content, so if you're in Adventure League, that's where you can add that. And then we're back to the Actions tab. So that's basically the real basic raw way to do this. I'm going to do a level up, so let's say we get to go to level 2. So you'll notice on the character sheet under class and level, if you click on this, there's nothing populated in these cells, and that is simply because they have no idea how you're going to run your campaign. So this is bookkeeping. It doesn't do anything to the character. It just basically allows you a way to keep track of experience. So the next level for this character is 300. So if I reach 300, either I'm awarded that from my game master, or he says go ahead and add it. But once I get to 300, I just manually type that in, or when the DM awards stuff, that'll populate this. It doesn't change anything on your character sheet. The only way to level up is either manually drag and drop, or in this case, we're going to use the level up button. So once you're in the level up button, you go back to the wizard. So the wizard allows for you to take and bring in whatever changes you're going to make for level 2. In this case, so if you just click this little up arrow, it'll take you to level 2. At this point, I get to pick my specialization. As you can see, class has come up here. So this particular wizard, I'm going to make him part of the School of Abjuration. And if there was any feats, it would come up there, but in this case, we don't have any. So for spells, you can go back and look. I have 5 of 8 now, whereas before it was a little less. So at this point, you can make changes. So you can change this if you need to. Right now, it's selected on cantrips, so I want to select to level 1. And if you want to add any more spells, you can. So 5 of 8, I can come back here, and this is the point where you can swap spells out if you need to. So at second level, you're allowed to swap your spells if you need to, and you can learn new spells basically. So I'm gonna go with let's see, there's Magic Missile, already did that, so I'm gonna go with Shield. So I added Shield to my list here. I still have 2 slots, but I did learn a new spell for second level. I'm leaving myself some flexibility because when I get to level 2, I've already spent it all on level 1 spells. I don't have any slots left over, so just remember, don't paint yourself into a corner. So I'm going to go ahead and hit commit, and that brings me to level 2 wizard. And on the back here, it's added anything that I've added. So in this case, shield is there, and it's parsable. So if you add this character to the combat tracker, and you click on the spell, it will add the additional armor class. And that would entail, if you go to your character mode, change it to combat and actions, that's the mode that you'd be in when you're playing. Although this character, I haven't learned or memorized any spells or prepared them, so I'll do that after I level up one more time. So I'm going to go ahead and level up once more. So I'm at a wizard level 2. I already have my archetype. I'm just going to do the level up process one more time so you can see the additional spells. So if I click on the magnifying glass again, it's going to take me back to this class and level section. I click level up, and again it brings me back to the character wizard. And as you can see, the regular character sheet is not there. So that's part of the way this works. So I'm going to click the up arrow, which is going to level me up, and then I'm going to click on spells. Once I pick spells, now the level 2 slots are available, so I'm going to click on level 2. I have 10 available for me now, so I can pick first level spells, but I want to do a couple of the basically the second level ones. So don't get confused with your summary down below and the spell list up above. So you want to make sure you're in the right level when you're selecting your spells. In this case, it's level 2. So I'm going to go ahead and check out a spell that is going to be, let's see, Flaming Sphere is 1. Let's see, I want to use another spell such as Hold Person. This would be handy. I still have 8 of 10, so I might pick one more. Now let's go with, let's see, Levitate. It's kind of cool. Don't get to use that very often, but it's kind of a cool spell. Okay, so I picked 9 of 10. I'm leaving a little room for flexibility in case I want to learn or find a new scroll or something like that. That'll give me the ability to add that to my spell book, so I'm just kind of leave that one there. Once I'm done, I'm go ahead and hit commit. That pretty much should carry over the changes. So if I go to the Actions tab, all that stuff that comes with the character is added, including the new spells. And they are parsed in here. So one thing as a spellcaster, you'll know if you played Fantasy Grounds before, click mode to preparation. This is where you prepare your spells for the day or for the session. So I'm going to pick just a few of these. So I'm going to do Mage Armor, Grease, Magic Missile, and probably Hold Person and Flaming Sphere. So those are the ones that I have available to cast for the next day. And then when I click on the combat and actions, what you'll notice here is I have these little stars next to the ones that are prepared. So these are just showing me all of my spells, but the ones I actually have readied are these 5 spells. Once you're done with that, you can go to the character portrait window. You can select a character portrait. So in this case, it'll be Fantasy Grounds Fantasy. These come with the base rule set, so if you don't have any prepared or you're not sure which kind of portrait you want, you can click on this, double click on the portrait. It opens up the dialog where you have all these bags, and in the bags would contain different pictures that come with the rule set, or sometimes they come with your books, or in this case, this is the Fantasy Grounds base program, in which they have commissioned a whole bunch of cool artwork for different characters. So I'm going to make this a female wizard. I'm going to pick a more of a feminine looking character. So here's an elf female. So that's my portrait. And if you don't have a token, your portrait becomes your actual token. So now what I'm going to do is drag and drop this over to the character sheet, and that will take care of that. So I'm going to go over and click on a different screen here so we can see more of the table. And let's see. So there's the expanded view, so you guys can see what I'm looking at. So this is the table that I'm working on. And if I bring this over, it's usually something I'll do is I'll bring the character sheet over and expand it out so it's a lot easier to access and it's closer to everything. I'm not dragging things across the screen. I also cleared that window because I had all the stuff that was showing what was added to the character sheet. Unlocking this so that I can kind of set this thing up to where I'd like to have it. And then I'm going to drag and drop the character on the combat tracker. So if you're the player, you can't do this if you're connected to a different table. But if you're the game master, this is what you do. You have the control over that. And at this point, this is where I would test the character. So if you had a map or some sort of, some sort of cool like simulation that you wanted to do. So in this case, I'm going to go into the campaign section. And if you go to images and maps, even if you don't have any content, you can filter this group, and you can go to a module that comes with Fantasy Grounds that most people, I don't know if people find this or not, but when you have just the SRD and such, you'd probably look for this more, but when you own content, you're probably not looking for it as much. But if you go to modules, and then you click on the activation window, search for maps on the bottom left. This Fantasy Grounds actually comes with some basic ones. So if you go to maps, there's the FG battle maps. This has been here since Classic, so these have been around. You'll see them in various tutorials. But once you have that loaded, it goes into your module library, and then you can look at the summary of what's in the list. Or you can actually come to the actual, in this case, on the right-hand side, I'm in Images in the Campaigns group. Open that up, filter this to FG Maps, or FG Battle Maps. You have an array of different battle maps here that you can pick from. I'm just going to pick Underwater Tunnels, Water Edge, or Underdark Tunnels, Water's Edge, something like that. So this gives you just a rough idea of what to expect when you get Fantasy Grounds, especially if you're new. And you have this image here. Unlock the image, and you go to the line of sight tool. You can already see it's been put on here, so you don't have to even worry about it. Fantasy Grounds and Smiteworks have already worked on that. So if I go back to this play mode, this is where you would actually be playing. I'm going to turn the grid on. It's not visible right now, so if I click on this, it will actually bring the grid up. You can change the grid color, so I'm going to change it to like a greenish color so it's a little easier to see. And that's that. And I'm going to take the character and put it on the map. So that's important that you build your character, have the character put on the combat tracker, and then from the combat tracker, if you're going to use a map, you have to drag the character from the map to the combat tracker. So that is the basic steps for character creation, and then this little end part's kind of bonus where I'm actually testing the character out. So I have the character on the map. I'm in play mode now. I have this unlocked. If you select the character, you're going to see the lighting that comes with the character. If you click on it again, that deselects the character, so you won't see any of the lighting. So if I have the character in possession, I can actually see the line of sight. So this particular character on the main page has dark vision. They didn't have that. This whole map would be pretty dark. So just kind of give you a heads up on that. So selecting and deselecting changes the vision, especially if you're the game master. You remember that. You got multiple tokens. You can't see through every token. You have to click on one of the characters or change the view in game mode so you can see. So you can actually turn on what the character sees. So this is what the character sees. There's a toggle for that. You can hit Control P if you want to turn it off or if you want to turn it on. That's just to really temporarily hold the buttons down and take a peek. So there we go. So that's how you build a character, and then at the end you can test it this way, make sure it's working right. And like I said, you go to the Actions tab. That's where you're going to be doing most of your play. So if I cast the light spell, you can cast this on somebody. You can, and if you know Fantasy Grounds very well, you can actually code this so that you can cast the light spell. So in this case, I might cast it on an object or on myself so that other players can have the visibility. Also, I can add Mage Armor at this point. So if I click on that, that's going to add the Mage Armor to my actual character sheet by drag and dropping it into the combat tracker. So that applies it mathematically. It doesn't change the character sheet. Let's see, for equipment, for your inventory, I just have a quarterstaff, so that's really not much I can show there other than changing from one hand to two hand. If you use a spell, like let's say we use that Mage Armor, you just check that off manually. So that's how you keep track of your character record. So anyhow, that's basically all I wanted to show. The character wizard's coming along. A lot of good improvements. It's really streamlined now. It's a lot better than it was before. If you're using Fantasy Grounds now, I recommend you update it if you're not going to have a game today. If you have a game today, you might want to wait and talk to your players before you do it and check it out then. If you plan on making characters, make sure your sources are loaded and that you have the character wizard and you just kind of take your time, play around with it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's come a long way. So I'm sure you'll find something that you don't like or some kind of bug, but you know, for the most part, it's come along quite a ways. Pretty happy with it. I think that they've done a pretty good job. I'm going to say that Smiteworks team, Dominic, and people that are giving them feedback are doing a good job because it's actually come a long way. So good on you. All right, folks. Hopefully that helps you if you're new to Fantasy Grounds, and if you were confused, you weren't understanding how I had all this stuff in here. That's because I actually had things in my library. So you have to have DLC. A lot of people think that if you buy the base license that you're going to get all the books. That's not the case. Normally, when you buy Fantasy Grounds license, you're just going to get the SRD, this basic map set, and a couple other things. But if you actually want the official content, those are separate purchases. So you do have to buy those separately. And a lot of complaint is, well, I already have the hardback books. I don't want to buy this again. Well, you don't have to. It just makes it easier when you have these already in Fantasy Grounds. You can enter them yourself. It's very time consuming. Rule books are a little bit harder to input, but if you just have the player's handbook, you're pretty much golden. That gives you a sample, an example of what you want. And if you want to look things up, you have a reference manual. Come through here and you can get different things. You can search for them. So to have the actual digital version is so much easier than trying to enter it or copy and paste everything in. That just takes forever. So it is more, what's your time worth is basically what you want to come down to. But if you just have like the base rules, like the player's handbook, the monster manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide for the 5th edition rule set, you're good to go. And I think that's pretty true of most rule sets, like even Pathfinder or Pathfinder 2. If you have the core books, the adventures are a lot easier to run and enter as you go, but the rule books kind of need some work, so they take some effort basically. If you're not willing to put in the effort and you don't really want to spend a bunch of money, just get the base license and the player's handbook. That's my suggestion. So anyways, take care, have a good afternoon or good evening, and we'll see you around. And hopefully just remember that this month is our Traveler 2 month, so if you're into sci-fi, Traveler, we have that going on right now. And if you need some classes or want to watch more videos, this will be up on YouTube. So we'll have all these available for you after the fact if you tuned in too late.